The scream echoed down the concrete hallway, sharp, panicked, and raw. It bounced off the steel doors and thick gray walls before fading into silence. No one answered. Inside the solitary block of ADX Florence, the sound of fear didn't last long. It got swallowed by the cold. In cell 323, Daniel Harlan stood pressed against the door's narrow window slit, his eyes wide. From where he stood, he could see the hallway glowing faintly under the dim security lights. A few seconds earlier, the silence had been broken by that scream, the kind that made even hardened men freeze. He whispered, "Someone's losing it again." On the other side of the door, nothing moved. The air felt heavy, filled with a stillness that only existed in a place like this, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, America's most secure prison. ADX Florence wasn't just a prison. It was a fortress built to break the strongest minds. Thick concrete, motion sensors, blast-proof doors, and silence so deep it pressed against your ears. Inmates here didn't talk, didn't see each other, and barely heard human voices. Most spent 23 hours a day alone. But tonight felt different. Daniel had been here 6 years, long enough to understand how things worked. There were no fights, no arguments, and no gangs here like in other prisons. At ADX, control wasn't physical, it was mental. And when a man's mind began to slip, there was nowhere for it to go but deeper into the dark. Then came another sound, a thud, followed by the distant buzz of the intercom. Unit Delta, lock inspection in progress. All inmates remained silent. Daniel stepped back. He could feel his heart racing. He'd heard about this before, lock inspections that weren't really inspections at all. Sometimes an inmate disappeared for hours. Sometimes for days. And when they came back, they were quieter. He sat on his bunk, running a hand over the cool concrete wall. "You wanted secrets?" he muttered to himself. "This place has plenty." 6 years earlier, Daniel had arrived at ADX Florence in a black van with no windows. The guards didn't speak, the trip took hours, and when the van finally stopped, all he could see was endless desert and the snow-capped Rockies in the distance. The facility rose from the earth like a bunker, sharp angles, no color, no sound but the wind. A single razor wire fence surrounded it, though no one had ever escaped. The guards called it the Alcatraz of the Rockies, and even they said it with a kind of nervous respect. As Daniel was escorted through intake, he remembered the guard's words, "You're here because there's nowhere else to send you." Inside, the rules were simple but absolute. No touching. No talking. No mistakes. Each cell was a small concrete box, bed, toilet, sink, and a slit of a window aimed at the sky so you couldn't see the mountains. Breakfast slid through a slot at 7 a.m., lunch at noon, dinner at 6 p.m. Always the same timing. Always the same tray. At first, Daniel thought he could handle it. He'd done time before, state prisons, even maximum security. But this was different. At ADX, time didn't move. There were no sounds, no smells, no conversations. Just silence and the hum of fluorescent lights. Weeks passed. He began to memorize the small noises, the shuffle of a guard's boots, the click of handcuffs down the hall, the metal groan of the doors locking into place. Then came the nights. Every so often, Daniel would wake up to faint murmurs, voices coming through the air vents. Sometimes prayers, sometimes laughter that didn't sound right. Once, he heard someone tapping the wall like Morse code, and another tapping back. He started counting the days on the wall with his fingernail, but after a while, he stopped. The silence became part of him. Then, one morning during his brief recreation hour, Daniel saw something unusual. Across the concrete yard, separated by fences and bulletproof glass, another inmate was being led out. The man moved stiffly, his head shaved, his eyes blank. It took Daniel a second to realize. He recognized that face. It was Vince Adler, a man who'd vanished from the unit 3 months ago after one of those so-called inspections. Vince turned his head slightly, and for just a moment, their eyes met. There was something wrong about his stare, distant, empty, like he wasn't really there anymore. Before Daniel could say anything, the guards led Vince back inside. That night, Daniel lay awake staring at the ceiling. The vents hummed softly, the lights flickered, and for the first time, he felt something cold move through his chest, fear. He whispered to himself, what did they do to him? The next morning, Daniel woke to the sound of keys outside his cell. A voice came over the speaker. Inmate 323. Prepare for transfer. Daniel froze. Transfers didn't happen here. Nobody left ADX Florence unless something had gone wrong. He stood slowly, his hands trembling. The door unlocked with a loud mechanical clank. 2 guards waited outside. You know the rules, one said. Hands behind your back. Daniel obeyed, his heart pounding as they cuffed him. As the door shut behind them, he glanced back at his cell one last time. Down the hall, through the small slit of a window, he saw the same thing Vince had seen before, the endless desert, stretching toward the Rockies. He took a breath. And then the alarms started blaring again. The red lights flashed, and the alarms echoed through every concrete corridor of ADX Florence. Guards shouted orders, their boots pounding against the floors as cell doors automatically locked in sequence. Daniel's heart slammed in his chest. The guards beside him didn't speak. They grabbed his arms tighter and rushed him down the hallway. Every door they passed was sealed, every inmate locked inside, silent, but watching through their narrow window slots. What's happening? Daniel asked, his voice shaking. Keep moving, one guard snapped. They turned a corner and entered a lower corridor that Daniel had never seen before. It was colder here, darker. The walls weren't the same smooth concrete as the rest of the prison. These were metal, thick and soundproof. The hum of the air system was louder, like machinery working deep underground. The guards stopped at a heavy steel door marked, Sublevel Restricted. One of them swiped a key card and entered a code. The door opened with a hiss, revealing a narrow hallway lined with reinforced observation rooms. Daniel's breath caught. Inside one of the rooms, through a small glass window, he saw Vince Adler again. The same man from the yard, sitting completely still on a metal chair, staring straight ahead. His wrists were strapped down. Tubes ran from his arm into a small monitor that blinked green. Daniel whispered, "Why is he in there?" The guard didn't answer. He just pushed him forward. They reached another door at the end of the hall, smaller, but sealed like a vault. One guard leaned close to Daniel's ear. "You wanted to know what happens to the ones who stop listening?" he said quietly. "You're about to find out." Daniel's throat went dry. When the door opened, the light inside nearly blinded him. The room was white, walls, ceiling, even the floor. There was only one chair in the middle, bolted down, with a small table beside it. "Sit," a voice commanded from the intercom above. He hesitated. "I didn't do anything." "Sit." The guards forced him into the chair. A faint electrical hum filled the room, and the air felt heavier. From a corner panel, a man in a white lab coat stepped out, holding a clipboard. He wore no name tag. His face was calm, too calm. "You've been at ADX 6 years, Mr. Harlan," the man said. "You followed orders, kept quiet, and survived. That's impressive." Daniel said nothing. "But," the man continued, flipping through his clipboard, "you've also shown curiosity. You've asked questions. About the noise at night. About the missing inmates." Daniel's pulse quickened. "I just wanted to know. Curiosity is dangerous here." The man turned to a control panel, adjusting something Daniel couldn't see. A faint buzzing sound filled the room. The lights flickered slightly. "What is this?" Daniel asked. The man didn't answer. He pressed a button. The hum grew louder, deeper, vibrating in Daniel's chest. His ears began to ring, his head pounding as the sound filled every corner of his skull. "Stop, please." The sound stopped instantly. The silence that followed was worse. The man spoke softly. "This facility was built to contain people who cannot be controlled by normal prisons. That includes physical containment and mental correction." Daniel looked up, trembling. "You're experimenting on us." The man's expression didn't change. "We're maintaining order." The intercom buzzed again, and a deep voice spoke from above. "Return the inmate to his unit." The guards moved forward. The man in the lab coat stepped back, scribbling something on his clipboard as the door slid open. As they escorted Daniel out, He glanced at the observation windows again. Vince Adler was still there, still staring straight ahead. But this time, Daniel noticed something new. A small trail of blood ran from Vince's nose down to his chin. The guard said nothing. Back in his cell, Daniel sat on the floor, shaking. His ears still rang, and the walls seemed to pulse with a faint mechanical hum he couldn't ignore. Hours passed before he realized something. He couldn't remember how long he'd been gone. There was no clock, no sunlight, no sound except for the steady hiss of the vent. He pressed his ear against the wall, listening. The tapping was back, faint, rhythmic. But this time, it wasn't Morse code. It was slower, softer, like a heartbeat. He closed his eyes and whispered, "They're testing something here." Days turned into weeks. Daniel stopped hearing the other inmates entirely. No footsteps, no doors, no keys. Just silence. It was as if the block had emptied. Then one morning, he woke up and found a note slipped through the meal slot. Something that should have been impossible. No one could get messages into a solitary cell. He unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was rough, shaky, but clear. "You're next. Don't listen when the humming starts." Daniel's heart raced. He tore the note apart and shoved the pieces into the toilet. But that night, as the lights flickered and the air vents began to hum again, he heard something else, a whisper, carried through the ducts. It said his name. Daniel. He froze, his body trembling. The whisper came again, softer, closer. "Don't fight it." The light overhead flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The room fell into total darkness. In the silence, only one thing remained, that same low, mechanical hum. Steady, relentless, everywhere. And Daniel realized the secret of ADX Florence wasn't what they did to your body. It was what they did to your mind.